Hello, this is another edition of the Stuart Doll Show. It is about 8:22 p.m. May the 4th. Just sitting here relaxing, watching Monday Night Raw like I normally do on the Monday. uh, this upcoming Friday is VE Day, known as Victory in Europe Day. This coming Friday, because on May the 8th, 1945, came the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany after 6 years of the most terrible and brutal war in human history, which cost the lives of millions of people, and also cost the lives of millions of Allied soldiers fighting for the rights and freedoms of those under Nazi occupation at the time. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff going on for VE Day on Friday, but it's also celebrated on May the 9th in Red Square in the Russian capital of Moscow. It's a time um, bitter rivals from the Cold War years come together to commemorate those who had died and served for the Western Allies, mainly the Americans, the British, the French, anybody that served with the Western Allies, but also served with the Soviet Red Army in that. Um, near the end of World War II, really in the turning point for the defeat of Nazi Germany was in the most decisive and bloodiest battle in history, the Battle of Stalingrad, which resulted in the capture of the entire German Sixth Army, including their commander, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus. When Adolf Hitler made Friedrich Paulus a field marshal, he thought it would compel Paulus to commit suicide, but Paulus decided instead of committing suicide to actually surrendering to the Soviet Red Army, and was in Soviet captivity till 1953, and then settled in East Germany. And then by that time, from 1942 on, the Nazi Germany was getting squeezed like a big noose from both sides, because they had the Western Allies coming in from the west, crossing the River Rhine, and also the Western Allies coming up through Italy from the south. And then, last but not least, the most terrible, dreaded thing that the Germans dreaded was the Soviet Red Army closing in from the east. And then what really was also the beginning of the end of World War II was the Battle of Berlin, which was conducted by the First Belarusian Front, commanded by Marshal Georgy Zhukov, and by the First Ukrainian Front, commanded by Marshal Ivan Konya. Though and Joseph Stalin, who was a Soviet dictator at the time before his death in March of 1953, pitted Zhukov and Konyev against each other to see who would take Berlin first. But at the Yalta conference in I believe February of 1942, I'm not exactly sure, it was decided that Berlin would fall in the Soviet zone of occupation, and Stalin was trying to make doubly sure that the prize would be his, because Stalin was absolutely convinced that he must control Berlin, and once he controlled Berlin, he would sit controlling the center of post-war Europe, and he didn't want anybody else to know. Not even the Allied Supreme Commander General Dwight Eisenhower, or even Omar Bradley, or George S. Patton, or British Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery, and then what got the Battle of Berlin started was at exactly 3 a.m. on April 16, 1945. It opened with a deafening barrage from 9,000 guns that almost packed wheel-to-wheel, firing artillery shells and Katyusha rockets that basically designed to pound the German lines. And that, I think what really ended the Battle of Berlin was really when on April 30th, when Adolf Hitler, the German Chancellor, the Führer of Germany, realized that the Soviet Red Army were literally on top of his last hiding place in his bunker beneath the Reichschancellery. And Hitler, even in his madness, knew that time had run out. So he took his wife of 24 hours, his mistress Ava Braun, gave her a cyanide capsule that pretty much killed her instantly. And then Adolf Hitler decided to take his own life by taking a handgun and literally putting a bullet to his brain, which it really didn't really do the Allies any favors, especially the Russians, because if the Russians have actually captured Adolf Hitler, they would put him on trial in front of the International War Crimes Tribunal in the German city of Nuremberg, like all the top Nazi leaders, from Karl Dönitz to Rudolf Hess, Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, and all the other top Nazi leaders that have been put on trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Most of the sentences that were carried out for top Nazi leaders that range from 10 years in prison to the death penalty. Well, the death penalty back then was either they put you either A, in front of a firing squad, and basically they'll tie you to a post and they'll put you in front of a firing squad, or the other way that the death sentences were carried out were by hanging. And the International War Crimes Tribunal kind of served as at the end of World War II as the first of its kind for anybody in human history that has committed war crimes. But other than that, Victory in Europe Day on May the 8th, but also it's celebrated on May the 9th in Russia. It's a day to remember those who have died for peace, freedom, and security. But most importantly, it signified the end of the most terrible conflict in human history, World War II, which lasted from September 1st, 1939 to May the 8th, 1945. But then, even though Nazi Germany was defeated, there was still the problem of Japan still fighting in the Pacific. Well, Joseph Stalin had told some of the Western Allied leaders that he would join the war against Japan within 90 days of Germany's surrender, and he kept that promise. The Soviet Union had about 40 divisions stationed in the Far East throughout the entire war, and that's so yeah. But then also the end of World War II was also marked with the unconditional surrender of the Empire of Japan. Um, Other than that, this is another edition of the Stuart Dahl Show. For you younger people, stay out of trouble. Keep in school and that, and you'll do fine. So for now, till probably tomorrow, y'all have a good evening and whatnot, and Alvina saying and peace.